the key to happiness? Is it more money, a bigger house, fancy cars, another degree to put on your wall? Well, it turns out it's actually none of those. And there's proof now, because Harvard did an 80-year study on happiness that started in 1938, where they interviewed 724 teenage boys from all walks of life, from students at Harvard to boys that lived in houses with no running water. And overall, there was one key factor to a person's happiness, no matter where they came from or how successful they did or did not become. And over the course of 80 years, Harvard found out that the number one thing that mattered the most to an overall happiness that a person had was this: the quality of their relationships. Now, this is not how many friends they had on Facebook or how many people they had stored inside of their cell phones, but the quality and the depth of their closest relationships. And they started this study when these men were in their late teens and kept it going all the way until their deaths, interviewing them every 2 years, and they sat down in their living rooms. They got their medical records. They talked to their doctors. They did brain scans. They interviewed their wives, their children, and over 2,000 of their grandchildren over the course of the years. And over again, they found that happiness or lack of happiness came from their relationships. But there was one interesting finding that the professors did not expect. The Harvard professors learned that the happiest people in the study were not only deeply connected with friends and family and their community, but they actually lived longer than those that were not. And they realized that social connections keep us healthier. And loneliness is toxic. Loneliness kills. In fact, 70 different studies across the world with 3.4 million participants found out that social isolation and loneliness are linked to premature death. And they found that the men that had the greatest levels of satisfaction in their relationship when they were 50 years old were the healthiest. And the ones that had the lowest levels of satisfaction in their relationships at 50, they didn't even make it to their 80s. So, what can we learn from these men over this 80-year study? If you want to be happy, then there's one thing that you should focus on, and that's the quality of your relationships. And that's with the people that are around you, the ones that you are closest to. Sure, go out and get the success you want, the money, the house, the cars, the business, or whatever else that you desire. That's your prerogative. But don't think that those things will make you happy. Don't think that they'll fill a hole that you feel inside of you. The only thing that can make you truly fulfilled are deep, meaningful, close relationships. So love the ones that are around you and put your relationships first and work on developing them. And the success, the money, the fulfillment, the health, and the happiness will naturally make their way into your life.
Hey, good morning and welcome to the 2 millionth week of online worship in the middle of COVID-19. We are so glad that you have chosen to take some time out of your Sunday morning and spend a few minutes here with us at West. If you are newer to the West online worshiping community, we invite you to text the number that you see on your screen and let us know. Let us know who you are. We also invite you to type your name in the chat room. We have staff that are manning the chat room this morning. You're important to us, and so we love knowing that you are choosing to worship with us this morning. We are going to dive into talking about happiness for 4 weeks. It was crazy this week. In a matter of literally like 24 to 36 hours, I had 4 different meetings with different folks and folks I haven't spoken to in quite some time, and they all at some point in the conversation said, I feel like I'm going crazy. You know, it's a struggle right now, and I do. That's why we're going to talk about happiness for a few weeks. We are continuing to wrestle with this pandemic and the fears that we're carrying around. And being a people of faith, we have an opportunity to claim our happiness. And it's really powerful when faith and science coincide. And so we're going to look at some scientific research this morning done by Dr. Laurie Santos. She is a Yale professor, and it actually has become the course that she teaches, the psychology of well-being or the psychology of happiness. It has become the most popular class at Yale in its 300-year history. It's also offered for free through online course platform. She is just giving away the content, and I've listened to a lot of her podcasts and studied a lot of her stuff, and it ties in with our faith. So we're going to be sending you those resources this week in your email, and we want you to go into this next 4 weeks and let's just claim our happiness. We as a staff are doing some fun things with you. So first of all, we have a challenge every week that I'm going to tell you about in just a second. But before we get to the challenge, this morning to kick it off, we're going to play COVID-19 bingo. Last Sunday we were sitting here, we were getting ready for worship, and all of a sudden everything started shaking, and then we realized, okay, there's been an earthquake. Before that, people were impacted by a hurricane, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and so it just seems like if it could go wrong, it seems to be going wrong right now. So we decided that we would play COVID-19 bingo with you. And we just see all the different things that have impacted our lives. You can go to our website right now, headingwest.org. And at the top of the screen, you're going to see the Happiness Project bingo, COVID-19 bingo. You'll see it when you go to the website. You can click it. There's lots of different bingo cards. Download one, and in a few minutes we're going to play. But before we do that, I want to tell you, every week for the next 4 weeks we're going to have a different challenge for you, so that we can do a little more than just talk about happiness, so we can actually claim it. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to have a different music playlist for you each week, and the songs are going to be your songs. So many were submitted this week, songs that make you happy. Next week the songs are going to be some staff person tell me calming songs that make you feel calm, and meditative songs. So we want you to send those to us. But it's really cool. I was listening to the happiness playlist that you all created yesterday, and it was interesting because I have my own genre of music that I listen to, and this playlist, it is so vast and so eclectic because it's songs that you've chosen. It gave me a new perspective, and so I started listening to different songs. I'm like, oh, I hate that song. And I'm like, no, actually, it does help me feel and be happy. So we're going to look at lots of different things for that. One thing we're challenging you to do today, throughout this week, is go to whatever music platform you use, and you'll see more about that on our website as well. Go to the platform that we're using or you use and download the happiness playlist. We're challenging you to listen to happy music 20 minutes every day this week. So we invite you to be a part of that. Thanks for checking us out this morning.
Join the West staff in this week's Project Happiness Challenge and listen to the West Happiness Playlist. The West Happiness Playlist is available on all the popular platforms, including Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, and YouTube Music. To download the Happiness Playlist, visit headingwest.org.
All right, so if you have your COVID-19 bingo card, I'm going to call out some things, and we want you to type bingo in the chat room once you get bingo. Or if the staff here are playing, you just get to yell bingo. But we want you to see how many of these lovely COVID-19 things have impacted you. All right, ready? The first one is you have had to cancel a vacation. The second is you have gained the COVID-19 or the COVID-5 or whatever, but you have gained weight during COVID. Next, you have run out of toilet paper. Next, You had a canceled music concert that you were planning on attending and it got canceled. You received a stimulus check. You have started a new job. You finally met your neighbor. You painted a room in your house. This is my personal favorite, but it's like filtered. But you lost your at some point during this. Yeah, you lost your beep. You started ordering groceries online. You started ordering meals online like DoorDash or Grubhub. Are y'all watching the chat room? Okay, the staff are so excited about playing bingo. I just want to make sure that like none of everyone online has bingo. Oh yeah, the middle one is a free space because everybody is impacted by that one. You have attended a Zoom happy hour. You had to get COVID tested. You are still working from home. You have attended online school. Yes, if you teach, that counts for sure. You missed a wedding. You started investing money in the ever-changing stock market. You attended a family gathering on Zoom. You have increased alcohol consumption. Suzanne Heck, congratulations on... And I hope yours wasn't the increased alcohol consumption, although I have, so I will confess that for just a minute and we'll repent of it later. We are so glad, Susie, that you, congratulations, have won COVID-19 bingo. There are so many things that have impacted us over the last 6 months, and it's crazy that it has been about 6 months that we've been living through this in some shape or form. But, you know, one of the things that Dr. Santos teaches, and one of the things that we embrace as a people of faith, is that our circumstances do not define us. This morning we're going to look just a little at this guy named the Apostle Paul and how what he said about how his circumstances impacted him. And we're going to think about how we are not going to let our circumstances impact us. And I'm going to give you some proven scientific principles that we are going to try to claim in our lives as we go through these next several weeks, so that when we face challenges such as this, the challenges don't define us, we define them. Thanks for joining in.
Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
So we also want to congratulate Greg and Polly Jackson. They too won COVID bingo, and so we are so happy for you about that, and glad that Gary is the spouse of Suzanne and he can pick up the hand sanitizer, so we don't have to mail it and pay shipping. But actually, Polly Jackson gave me some inspiration for today's message after we did Friday's email devotion a week ago, and we talked about how we were going to talk about joy last Sunday to finish up the message series, The Voices Inside Our Heads. Polly sent me a message and she said, you know, throughout this whole COVID thing, like I've wrestled with my own thoughts and, you know, have had negative thoughts and felt grumpy, and then I decided I get to choose. And that's the whole point, right? And that's what we're going to be talking about for the next several weeks, is the fact that we get to choose. And our circumstances, they do not define us nearly as much as we think that they do. And so Polly shared with me one of the things that she's doing to choose to be happy is that she's a runner. And so when she goes out to run, she makes it a gratitude run. And so as she is running, she counts the things that she is happy for. When she wrote me a week ago, she said, you know, I've got 26 things. That's the highest that I've gotten to so far. She wrote me this week and she said, I'm up to 30. And so what she does, and she said she was so grateful for her church. And so, Polly, thank you for sharing that with us. Those are the things that keep us going in this time that we are separated from you all. But she's like, you know, I list my family. I list my health. She said there are so many things that I can choose to be thankful for if I stop and think about it. And so that's actually one of the things we want you to do over the next several weeks is choose happiness. I want you to take a look at this quote by Viktor Frankl. He's an Austrian psychiatrist and he is actually a survivor of the Holocaust. So take a look at this quote. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances and to choose one's own way. I want you to take a look at this pie chart that Dr. Santos uses with her course at Yale. Happiness depends on 50% of our genetics. So we do inherit some traits that lend ourselves towards being happy, or depression is hereditary sometimes. And so please, just a little disclaimer this morning, if you are suffering from clinical depression, please don't feel like this is saying that there is something wrong with you, because it isn't. And that is a real thing that many of us wrestle with. We've talked about that in our talk back that we have when you send in questions. But the point is that 50% we cannot control, and we understand that, and we recognize that, and we embrace it. But the other 50% we can choose. 10% of that is based on our life circumstances. And so that goes to Dr. Santos' point. Our circumstances do not define us nearly as much as we think that they do. 40% is our internal state of mind. So what do we do with that? Well, we have to look at how we are choosing to think. We talked for the last several weeks about our feelings and about how our feelings can grip us and control us. But what we need to do is we need to start claiming our ability and the power that we have to think our way through our circumstances. That's what this guy named the Apostle Paul did. He didn't start out all great. He was actually a persecutor of Christians and followers of the way. People didn't like him, and so after he had his big conversion aha moment, and he fell in love with the risen Christ, and he changed his life, he led a very persecuted life for years. In fact, all of his ministry was plagued with different things. He was imprisoned over and over again. Different scholars say it was a different amount of time, but most will agree on the fact that he spent at least 5 5 years of his ministry life imprisoned, either under house arrest or actually in a prison. He had some kind of physical obstacle in his life that he just couldn't overcome. And he didn't have these idyllic circumstances, but he chose how he looked at them. And he did not allow his circumstances to define him, because he chose to think about them and approach them in a different way. It's a real thing. It's a scientific thing, and it's a faith thing. So I want you to take a look at these words from the Apostle Paul. They're from the second book of Corinthians, and they're from chapter 12. These are Paul's words. Because of the extravagance of those revelations, he had been preaching and teaching, and people were, they didn't exactly agree with everything that he was saying, so he's acknowledging that his teaching seemed a little outlandish to everyone. So he says, because of the extravagance of those revelations, and so I wouldn't get a big head, I was given the gift of a handicap to keep me in constant touch with my limitations. Satan's angel did his best to get me down. What he in fact did was push me to my knees. There was no danger then of walking around high and mighty. At first I didn't think of it as a gift. I begged God to remove it. 3 times I did that, and then I heard this from God. My grace is enough, and it is all that you need. My strength comes into its own in your weakness. Once I heard that, I was glad to let it happen. I quit focusing on the handicap and began appreciating the gift. It was a case of Christ's strength moving in on my weakness. Now I take limitations in stride, and with good cheer. These limitations that cut me down to size, abuse, accidents, opposition, bad breaks, I just let Christ take over. And so the weaker I get, the stronger I become. Those words are written by a gentleman who was under constant persecution, abuse, and all kinds of things. And Paul chose not to let those things define him. So how? Well, the faith part of this says that if we will acknowledge when we are in those difficult places, that there is a power that abides in each of us, and that love and that power that comes through the Holy Spirit, that we have it in us to claim, then that's how we can change those thoughts. Have you ever noticed that when you're in a funk and you start thinking about like one sort of bad thing, then that leads to like 5 bad things, which then leads to 10 bad things, and pretty soon the whole world is just falling apart, and you are, lying in a fetal position in your bed crying and weeping because it just feels like everything is so sad. That's the power of our thoughts and our thinking. And we can stop that, actually. We can choose how we think. So what do we do with that? Well, one of the things is we can have people in our midst that call us out on that. There are lots of different articles written by different psychologists and psychiatrists about the power of our thoughts and how our thoughts control the way that we live and our internal happiness. And so one of the things that psychologists teach is to surround ourselves with people that will speak truth in love. And so when we do start down those negative spiraling pathways and we feel like everything is bad, we have somebody to say, okay, you can visit that place, the sad place or the bad place, for a little while, but you don't get to stay there. That's actually in United Methodism, one of the things we say. We have holy conferencing. We will have holy conversations with one another, and we hold each other accountable. So that's one of the things that scientists say that we should do is look at how we control our thoughts. And the other thing that Dr. Santos teaches that we're looking at today, that the Apostle Paul lived, is envisioned by this quote from Nietzsche. Take a look at this. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Now, there are some dangers with this if we allow our hows and whys to be defined outwardly. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about later in this series, is that sometimes we think of like our circumstances or our possessions or our status, that those are the things that are going to define us, and that like if we'll work a little harder, and that's our why, we want a better job or a higher salary or a bigger house or a better car or another degree or the perfect relationship or all these other, whys, if we let those define us, then odds are we won't be happy. And this is where that faith part comes in. We have to recognize that we are all created as unique and amazing individuals. And you have to claim your uniqueness and your amazing gifts that you have that no one else has. No one else is exactly like you. So the why that you are living, it needs to be defined internally, not externally. Sometimes we get in trouble when we start living our lives for other people or for other things. And then when those circumstances go awry and they change and they go down a negative path, we feel like we lose our identity. One of the things that Santos teaches is this principle of WOOP. You see the letters on your screen right now. It's WOOP. And this is where the science matches up with our faith. She teaches the why. And she teaches that in order to go about being a person of happiness and claiming our happiness, we have to identify what our goals are. And so in her phrase that she uses, WOOP, the W stands for wish or vision or goal. So what is your goal? You have to have one. And so one of the things that we want you to do over the next 4 weeks as your staff, we're encouraging you to think about your goals. What are your goals? And are they faith-based goals, or are they goals that just are going to lead us to pursuing something that's actually never truly going to make us happy? We want to establish those goals. We want to identify what they are, and not some big nebulous something, but be very specific. So what are your life goals? Name them. That's your wish. That's the wish that Santos talks about. And then the next letter, the O, is for obstacles. So much has been published about the power of positive thinking, and that if we would just think it, it will come. Lots of religious books were written about that. The secret to life is if you just think it, it will happen. That has not worked out for many people, and including me. So it doesn't always work that way. And there is something to be said for the power of positive thinking, but Santos teaches that it's more than just that. You can't just sit around and think positively all the time. That actually can become very destructive. That what we need to do is, when we have our wish, when we have our goals, we need to then think about all the obstacles that we are going to encounter. Because when we push our positive thoughts up against the understanding that we have, or the anticipation of our obstacles, it makes us find a way around them, to which is the second O, which is the outcome, the desired outcome. Picture for yourself what your desired outcome is for your wish. Don't just have some kind of like big grandiose wish. Think of your wish, think of your goal, then look at the obstacles that are going to get in the way, that potentially could get in the way, and then know what the outcome is that you're trying to achieve. Because then if you can picture the outcome, if you can picture the win, then you can figure out how you're going to get there. And that's the P, the plan. We need a plan of how we're going to achieve our wishes, how we're going to achieve our goals. For many of us, it is goes back to the COVID bingo, the not losing our beep. That's what people were telling me all week. I feel like I'm going crazy. 4 people in 24 hours said that to me. I think we are wrestling with some really big stuff right now. And so one of the things that I would encourage you to do this week is to go back to the words from the Apostle Paul. Because you see, that strength that he claimed and that peace that he claimed, it's here for each of us. There are songs on the happiness playlist that you can listen to, spiritual, faith-based songs that can be sources of peace for you. Prayer and meditation, those also are sources of peace. And recognizing and thinking and acknowledging that strength that Paul had that enabled him to undergo abuse and a physical handicap or a physical limitation. None of those things claimed his happiness. He claimed his happiness. And that's what is up to us to do. There was a friend of mine years and years ago, a very dear friend, and my family just clicked with her and loved her so much. And she was probably one of the most happy people you'd ever want to meet. And we were friends for a really long time. And over the course of those years, I watched her experience lots of different hurdles and obstacles that come in life. And she would tell you that she just wanted to be happy. And she was this amazing, bubbly personality. And then her marriage ended. Her marriage fell apart, and at the beginning of that transition, she taught me about this thing called the bitter barn. I want you to take a look at this screen on your screen, this image on your screen. Are you bitter or better? She talked about this place called the bitter barn, and I would ask her, I'm like, how are you navigating these really difficult waters? And she's like, well, I am choosing not to stay in the bitter barn. That I'll go there, but I'm not going to stay. Well, over the next 5 to 7 years, her life just never kept on the trajectory that she wanted it to be on. And she forgot about her bitter barn. And she forgot about the fact that she wasn't going to let herself stay. And it was actually really pretty tragic. The more difficult the life circumstances became, the more bitter she became. And she self-isolated herself, and several of her other friends found it very difficult to relate to her. I did too, because every conversation was just filled with anger and spite and malice and wanting to get revenge. That was so unlike her, and I told her that. I'm like, you're not a vengeful person. This doesn't make sense to me. And we just couldn't see eye to eye on that. Our friendship ended up growing really apart. We would go months and not speak to each other until she got the diagnosis of cancer. And at that point in time, I didn't really know how to reinstigate that relationship because so much time and space had passed. But I was her friend, and what do you do in times like that? So I sent her a text, and we ended up meeting. Her diagnosis was terminal, and they shared with her she had 4 to 5 years maybe left to live. And she shared with me these words that I'll never forget. I wasted so much of my life chasing happiness, when truthfully happiness was with me all the time. I just couldn't see. To hear somebody that is facing or experiencing a terminal diagnosis own that they've wasted a lot of their life, it was leveling and humbling. We talked about the fact that she could just stay in that place, recognizing that she had lost a lot of her hope and her happiness and wasted it, or that she could live each day, however many there were going to be, and live those with happiness and joy. And that's what she did. It was like a complete 180 change. When we celebrated her life, the sanctuary was filled with people wearing bright clothes because they said that's the joy that she impacted in their lives. We can all claim that. Obstacles and the paths that we have in our ways, sometimes they just bite. And it seems like hurdle after hurdle will get in our way. But if we know who we are and we know where we're going, if we know what our wishes are, then we can envision the obstacles. We can know that there is a desired outcome and that we can develop a plan to go along the way. I would encourage us to own that our plan is living as a people of faith. There's something very real and something very powerful of knowing that we aren't in this alone, and that there is a peace within each of us and a love that's within each of us that we can claim. We just have to do the claiming. Over the next several days, what would it be like if we claim our happiness? I invite you to do that with me today. Will you pray with me? Gracious God, you do show us that there is a way over and around and through all of the obstacles that we face. Our circumstances don't have to define us, and we control our thoughts. They don't have to control us. God, use us. Let us be sources of happiness, not only for each other, but let us find and claim that happiness within each of us, so that we may live and be the people of peace and love that you call us to be. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. This next song is amazing. It is a powerful song about how love comes first. I invite you to take a listen.
This is the story of a runaway with no way home and no way out. I threw the best of me away. I had my chance, it's too late now. Too far gone and too ashamed to think that you'd still know my name. But love refused to let my story end that way. You didn't wait for me to find my way to you. I couldn't cross that distance, even if I wanted to. You came running after me when anybody else would have turned and left me at my worst. Love moved first. Oh, oh, oh. What kind of grace, relentless grace, would chase this rebel down? Crawl into this prisoner's cage, take my hand and pull me out. You knew I couldn't make the change, so you became the change in me. And now I live to tell the story of the God who rescues. You didn't wait for me to find my way to you. I couldn't cross that distance, even if I wanted to. You came running after me when anybody else would have turned and left me at my worst. Love moved from the throne to the manger, from a manger to the grave. Your cross is the proof. Love made the first move. From a grave man to keep you, to a stone rolled away. Your cross is the proof. Love made the first move. I remember where you found me. I'm amazed by where I stand. Your cross is the proof that love made the first move. You didn't wait for me to find my way to you. I couldn't cross first.
So, I know that many of you are newer to the West worshiping community. So, one of the things we value here is transparency. And so I want you to know that this is not just bogus words that we throw out to you. It's things that we as your staff team, we live. I was looking around the room during the last song and thinking about the obstacles and the hurdles that all the folks in this room have had to face. And, you know, we mean what we say. A while back, when we could actually meet in person, someone came and wanted to meet with me about the bitterness that they were experiencing post-divorce. I guess they thought that because I was divorced that I would empathize with that. And so I'd never met this person before. They just heard about me from a friend from a friend. And so they're like, you know, I'm so angry and all the normal reactions that we have when we go through something like that. And so I said, okay, well, you know, tell me more about that. And they said, well, you know, when this happened like 12 years ago. And I'm like, 12 years ago? Okay. I mean, I thought it had just happened a few months ago. And so we talked a lot about choices that we make when our obstacles getting in the way. So my wish, like one of my wishes, my goal is I want to love and I want to be loved. And so, you know what, when obstacles get in the way of that, we have to figure that out. And so pain is real. And we all undergo a lot of different kinds and types of pain. But we choose. I'm not sure the person left really happy with me because I didn't say, oh yeah, let's stay bitter and angry. I'm like, no, you have to choose. You have to choose to be happy. We get to choose. The Apostle Paul shows us how. 2 Corinthians 12. Go take a look at that this week and go in peace. Stay and check out Amped, and then we'll be in Talkback answering your questions. Have a great week.